Welcome, everybody, to our Meet the Expert series. My name is Terry Maxwell, and I'm delighted that you're here, and I can't wait to introduce our expert today so that you can pick her brain. Also, please attend any of our events. We have business growth events like the Business Growth Power Hour. We do that about every other month. It's a way that we come together as a community and people talk about the challenges they have growing their business. We collaborate. We brainstorm together, you get breakthrough business ideas, and you really get to experience the whole community. It's free to anybody that considers himself a conscious entrepreneur. In addition to that, from our Personal Fuel series, we have Leap into Prosperity. We're a couple of months into this year that is 2024. There's a lot that's already happened, a lot more that will happen. How do you keep your mindset focused on your goals? And how do you keep your energy in a state of abundance and prosperity when things don't work the way that you thought they would work? That's what we'll cover in Leap into Prosperity. A little bit about my background. I was part of a team. I was president of an internet subsidiary. And as a team, we took a company public in 1999. So I got to experience that wonderful ride. A little bit later, Prodigy bought us, and then AT&T bought that company. Then 9/11 happened. I left and I went out and started my own consulting company, and I grew that. And I sold it in early 2008 because I felt like I wasn't making a difference in the world, and I really wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a difference, and I also wanted to experience financial success. So that turned into Share on Purpose, which is like a purposeful Shark Tank. We have a speculator fund that invests in cool business ideas like Your Izzy Beauty. It's the first zero waste beauty line. We also have what we call the Cultivator, where we create our own companies. We have 5 of those now, and I have an amazing leadership team that runs these companies. And then Shifco was our 5th concept, and it launched in 2020. And I dedicate at least half of my schedule to working with members to help them grow their businesses. Our impact, a year into launching Shifco, we began calculating our impact based on what we call MSR, Member Success Ratio. What % of our members are showing growth in their business? And we set a benchmark that we wanted every member to double their business. And by July of 2021, 53.4% of our members had done that. In December of last year, we were up to 84.9% of our members were doubling their revenue. And that's important because if you want to make a bigger impact, growing your business is part of how you make a bigger impact. And there's 3 reasons why we're getting these kinds of results. First is Shifco is based on a methodology that I built called the Conscious Business Growth Platform, and it's a diagnostic prescriptive model. What it does is it helps each member identify the one thing that they need for their business to move forward. And we all know that success breeds success. So when your business isn't going where you want it to go, you get down, you get discouraged, you get frustrated, you're not sure what to do. But when your business moves forward, you start to see, hey, there's light. I know what to do next. And we use the diagnostic prescriptive model with every single member to diagnose the one thing that each member needs, and then they're served up that one thing. In addition to that, you get an entire team to support you. You have a mentor, you have multiple coaches who are all experts in their domain. You have a phase coach, and the phase coach's job is to move you from one business phase to the next, in addition to a member TLC team. So for your monthly membership, you have this amazing team that supports you. And third is Personal Fuel. We know that when you build your confidence and you reduce FUD, it increases your energy. You have better creativity. You're able to overcome obstacles. And so we provide a lot of Personal Fuel training as well. So that's Shifco. And as part of Shifco, I want to introduce member number 3. So Elizabeth Eiss was the first person that I called, and she is member number 3. I called her when I had the idea for Shifco, and I said, hey, I've got this idea. Elizabeth was one of those people that had been pushing me for a while to take some of my methods and put them into a community. And I said, I've got this idea for the way I want to do it. What do you think? And Elizabeth jumped in. She's also our secretary of our board of directors. She invested in Shifco. She's also a mentor, and she's one of my advisors. She's somebody that I trust. Elizabeth is CEO of Results Resourcing. It's a freelance talent matching platform. So when you need a virtual assistant, or you need someone to help you with your social media, or you need somebody to help you with your accounting, you go to Results Resourcing. Elizabeth's team will help you figure out what it is that you need, and will match you with a freelancer to do that. So welcome, Elizabeth, to the Meet the Expert series. I'm so grateful that you're in my life, and I'm so grateful for the wisdom that you're going to share with our members today.
Well, I'm honored to be here today, and appreciate the, all the kind words. And I really am a huge fan of SHIFCO. Terry and I met a long time ago as we were pursuing organizations that were more purpose-driven, and over the years have evolved to collaborate, really around SHIFCO. And I think that's really what motivates me today, is I do have a purpose. And in fact, Terry, you would be proud, but I have my purpose key on today.
I love it.
So basically, to make a long story short, I spent many, many years in corporate, basically running businesses for a living. And I did a lot of technology work, implementing technology for business process in corporate. And 22 years ago, I left and joined my first startup. And I kind of went cold turkey, and I've been in that world ever since. And I really found at the end of the day, when you don't have a corporation to set your purpose, you have to find your own. And over time, I really landed on the notion, and not that it was instant or I knew it, it really was evolutionary, that my purpose was to empower the purpose of others. And the first startup that I joined was all about expertise location. And it was in a corporate environment, but how do you organize expertise? And this was 22 years ago, knowledge workers through the internet to make them available as a network, not sitting in a call center, but basically creating a call center in the cloud. And that was really my first exposure to really thinking about how do you make expertise available to all kinds of people, and how do you enable people to share their expertise as a business. And with the world more and more automated these days, there's many ways to do that. There are many platforms, and including things like Zoom that weren't even imaginable, in the early aughts. So anyway, that kind of is my purpose. And long and short, when I joined my first startups and then started consulting for startups, I was hiring a lot of freelancers because I'd have project teams and I needed people to round me out. So despite my very broad background, I would either have capacity problems, there's only so many hours in the day, or I would need somebody that was an expert in this industry or that industry, or a particular skill depth. And I found an extremely rich world of freelancers and this was all around 2008, 2010, something around there. Then I was really good at finding freelancers, and lo and behold, my clients started to say, hey, that Terry is awesome. Can you find us a Terry for our team? Because we know Terry works for your projects. You can't hire her. So can you find me a Terry? And that's really how it started. And I was a power user of all the big platforms out there. And basically, I'm also all about scale. I don't like ideas that are onesies and twosies. I like to be able to think big and, okay, how do we really let this idea take off? So doing onesies and twosie introductions on other platforms was not something that was appealing to me. So I naively at the time said, well, I'm going to build my own platform. And I did. It was a much bigger effort than I thought, but I didn't realize that I had systems design in me, but I did. And mostly because I was process oriented. I thought about how do you get something from A to Z? So while process isn't sexy, everything is a work order, basically, how things get done. And so I was good at translating how things get done into a business partner who's my developer. And, he and I worked together to put together our the results resourcing technology platform. And we've basically automated from A to Z the process of hiring freelancers. And this kind of goes into the whole entrepreneurial journey, but the insights I got from working with other platforms were that, and I guess I should have mentioned this in terms of my purpose, the population I particularly care about serving are solopreneurs and small businesses that don't have a lot of employees. And that goes back to my purpose because it's the majority of businesses in the United States, 99.9%, and 27 million are solopreneurs that have no employees. And another 6 million or so, have less than 20. And frankly, no one's helping them. All those platforms, they automate all the processes, but there's no human to talk to. You talk into technology. So my particular epiphany was I wanted to build technology that would cost effectively insert a human into the process. So a small business owner, solopreneur could talk to somebody and say, here's what I want to achieve. And then basically we would help them reverse engineer what they wanted to do to say, okay, if you want to do this, these are the skills you need. And here are vetted freelancers that could do that work for you that you can trust. And that was really the core idea. And that's really what results resourcing does, is we're a platform that inserts the human to help a very disaggregated market. We can't aggregate that market, but we can make it efficient to service that market through technology, but still offering the human help that makes such a difference to smaller businesses who may not be technologically oriented or have the time and patience for technology. So that's what results resourcing is. And I can take a break here, Terry, or continue to talk a little bit about what we do today after we started with our first
We'll come back to that. You've mentioned why you started the business, which is really to empower the purpose of others and to help them get to where they want to go. And you also mentioned it was way harder than you thought it would be. I've never not heard that in the tens of thousands of entrepreneurs I've worked with in the last couple of years, last couple of decades. So given that, what is it that motivates you today? What is it that motivates you when you're up and when things are not going the way that you want? So, in terms of how do you keep going?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I'm more successful on some days than others. But I think if you go back to your purpose, it helps you kind of see through the hurdles you're facing. And you look at it more in terms of, well, if I want to get here, then all right, how do I figure out this problem or this obstacle that I'm facing? And since frankly, we do that every day with the clients that we serve, sometimes I have to take a step back and be my own client in a sense and go, all right, how do I have perspective about whatever this is? And I guess one of my biggest and most favorite things to do, and you mentioned what if up, is I like to take a problem and go, okay, what can I learn from it? It's something real. It's some obstacle in the market that's holding me back. It's real. I can't pretend it's not. So how do I figure it out? How do I, get energized by it or come up with something new, that will help me handle it, not just get around it. And I think that's been kind of one of the things I've done all along is how do I figure it out? How do I make it into something useful? Because generally problems are symbolic of things that are very real. It's like, okay, don't let it stymie you. How do you figure out a way around it or to somehow fix it, solve it in your systems?
Yeah, and you've really taught me how to use curiosity to solve problems. And you're one of the few people I know that you don't get distracted very long by the problem before you start getting curious about, well, where is this going to lead me? And you're really able to navigate that. And I've learned a lot watching you do that.
Well, it's funny, but one of my favorite stories is really how we ended up doing what we do today. As I mentioned, we started out doing talent curation for any kind of freelancer. And our source was LinkedIn Recruiter. So we have access to anybody that wants to freelance anywhere in the world, although we focus on the United States and Canada. And largely because our clients want people that grew up here, understand the culture, and understand how business is done in North America. And while there's super smart people everywhere in the world, that doesn't mean that they have the culture and business process in their bones, like people that grew up here. So that's a choice that we made. But what was really interesting to me, again, going back to the market I want to serve, the solopreneurs and small businesses, they came back to me, and this is one of these things I was listening to. They kept saying to me, well, we love the custom idea. We can get exactly what we want if we really know what we want. But at the end of the day, I don't want to wait 3 weeks or 4 weeks to get matched with a freelancer, and it maybe that one freelancer can do what I need right now, but in 3 months, can they do what I need? Or do I have to start another search for another freelancer, more money, more time, all that kind of stuff? So basically what these small businesses kept saying to me, and these four things are just indelibly impressed in my mind. They wanted competent, reliable, nice, and they wanted it right now. And so I said, all right, how do I figure that out? How do I deliver competent, reliable, nice right now? Well, the answer was having pre-vetted freelancers. And so I went to people that I had worked successfully with before or had worked through my platform for others successfully and talked to them about being pre-vetted, and they were competent, reliable, and nice, first of all, and would they be willing to be available now? Well, they were, as long as it was clear the work that they would do, not something off the wall, and that their rates were reasonable and things like that. So I basically built what I call on-demand jobs, which are fairly well-defined jobs. They're really virtual assistants. People would say VAs or executive assistants, EAs, project managers, social media admins, light bookkeeping. It's the back room of every business. And I do say a lot that every business has a back room. And that's the work that the principal should not be doing. They need to find someone competent, reliable, and nice that can do that for them to free them up to do whatever it is they're called upon to do. And so that's really what I do today is I have these pre-vetted freelancers. And the other thing that's interesting is there are individuals, but they're individual business owners that have teams of freelancers that work for them. So some have 10, 15 people, either employees or contractors that they have preferred relationships with. So it solves a lot of problems. It's scalable. There's no capacity limits. And not only that, a business owner can come and need 5 different things that people with 5 different skill sets can all deliver from the same team. And so it's really solved a lot of problems, all because people came back to me and said, I kind of like your, custom idea, but it doesn't serve me. And so I figured out how to do it. And the last piece I'll just mention here that's like my favorite story is I really felt very sad for a while because I rebuilt part of the technology to support this, which was great. It was fun to do. But I was also abandoning part of the technology that I'd spent a lot of time building, this individual curation process. And, I had to kind of let it go because that was my sense of loss. The client didn't care. But at the end of the day, now my opportunity is to find more freelance teams. And so I'm going to redeploy that side of my platform, not to find individual freelancers for clients anymore, but to find individual freelancers that can form teams so I can have more teams to serve more clients. So it's just kind of interesting how if you just hang in there, things kind of come together.
I love that. And you're really, really good at using problems to turn into solutions. And I can see how you've then turned that into, expanding the services. I'm curious, when you're working with your customers, how do you ensure that you meet their needs and actually provide a solution to their challenges? Because the freelance space can be very difficult.
Yeah, I can. And, the phrase I heard a lot from prospective clients was freelance flake. People seemed solid in the beginning and then things would happen. And of course that does happen. Life is life. I mean, COVID happened during all this, and that would create interruptions. But I think there's no magic bullet. But I think the first thing is recognizing is there's one coin and it's a flip side to both coins. There's the client on one side and there's a freelancer on the other. The client and the freelancer have to match. So you can't force the freelancer to adapt to the client because the freelancer will eventually get tired of doing that. So the key is finding the good match between the two. So they both are incented to work together. They're both solving each other's needs. And we start that by that human conversation and getting clear on the job profile. Because if we're clear on that, then I can our opportunity to make a great match with freelancers is greatly increased. So the probability that they'll succeed together is higher. And then they're going to want to keep working together because neither wants turnover. Both want to work with a stable resource, or a stable client. So we, in a sense, vet the client for the freelancer, and we vet the freelancer for the client. And so by doing that work up front, it's not a click of a button on a platform. We clear the air, and it's not that every client in particular is easy. Some are very difficult, some are prima donnas, and the prima donnas aren't really our target. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's a couple of calls, to help get clear on what's needed. And I'm thinking about one yesterday that we had, and it's a really bright man with a very successful consulting practice, but he's not organized. He's got 6 different coaching platforms, and he's got all these different, his data's in a spreadsheet, and he can't be bothered, but he needs to be bothered, but he doesn't want to be bothered. And it's finding the right chemistry of a freelancer that can do all the things he needs and has the patience to work with them. But that's part of seeing the long game, that, oh, this is not going to be a short-term dissatisfying experience, but I'm building something for the long term that I can be invested in helping this man build a more successful practice. And so I think that enabling both sides to feel a reward working together goes a long way to reducing problems long term. It's not a transaction. Most of our jobs are ongoing as opposed to just a quick hit.
Which is very different than some of the other freelance platforms that are out there where, you're not getting any help to think that through to do the matching.
Yep. They're really left to their own devices. And somebody like that client I was talking about would be completely unsuccessful and feel that all freelancers are a failed strategy, when that's not the case at all. It's just, you got to find the right one. That's the win.
Got it. And then as you think about your journey, what keeps you motivated today?
Oh, well, I just continue to find rewards in helping people, like having a conversation with that client last night, and a couple others that called me that weren't sure, they were considering offshore resources. And, I don't judge. I just kind of say what I think is going to be the pros and the cons. But I think every time I help somebody do more, makes me feel good. And I think about 99.9% of the businesses in the country, in any economy really, and the more impact each one of them has a positive impact on their communities, on themselves, on their businesses, on the economy in general. And I think that's an empowering idea. So that keeps me going. It really does.
And on that note, one of the things, when we're coaching ShiftCo members, and they're at that point where they need to hire talent, what advice would you give to somebody, whether they're a client of yours or not, in how do you know when you need a person versus when you need technology versus when you need a process?
Well, that is certainly one of my favorite topics. So I will answer it 2 ways. The first thing is I try to help the client understand the value of their time, because most will, especially solopreneurs, will come and say, I can't afford it. And I say, I don't say this, but this is what's in my head. That's nonsense. Because when I ask them, what is an hour of your time worth? They never, ever say $50. I have a survey tool that we've created called the ROI of time calculator. And that's the first question. And the average of all the people that have ever taken this survey is $170 an hour. And so if you think about hiring a freelancer, and ours are more expensive than offshore, depending on the role, it might be anywhere from $45 to $55, $60 an hour, but it's US. They understand the business here. They speak and write English well, understand the culture. It's not going to be an overseas price, but the difference between 170 and 45 is significant. There's where you can afford it. And so if you can start to outsource tasks that shouldn't be done by $170 an hour resource, that's you leverage, you arbitrage the difference in cost. And yes, it's a leap of faith. You have to figure out how to outsource and actually do it. But over time, that's the epiphany people have. Like, oh wow, I now have somebody that I trust. They're doing all this work I don't want to do, but they love to do that work. Your back office work is that VA's front office work. They love to do that work and they're really good at it. So it's understanding the value of time is probably the first thing. And that takes time because people are overwhelmingly thinking, oh, I'm going to do it myself, because it's easier and it doesn't cost anything, but it does cost. Whether it's opportunity cost of not delivering value to their clients, or they just get tired, and they don't do that back end work well. So I think that's number one, and that frankly leads me to the next thing. And I personally believe that scale is all about process, tools, and then people. And so I think it's not easy for everybody to do process, but that's okay because there's a freelancer that'll get it out of your head and onto a piece of digital paper for you in a nanosecond. You don't have to be process oriented to realize that there's a certain way of doing things to deliver value to your client. And writing that down, frankly, is a business asset. It's something that adds value to your business if it's written down, and you'll have consistent work that's done consistently. And so by just developing process means that work gets done consistently. You don't have to do as much repeat work because everyone, whether it's you or someone else, is following a process, or you're using a template, which is consistency. So process is really the place to start, and it can streamline operations by having process. After you have process, then you get your tools. Whether it's a CRM or a newsletter tool, email management tool, whatever it might be. But what I find people do is they just buy a tool. Oh, they think this is going to solve my problem. But if they don't have processes, or they haven't really thought about how they want work to be done, did they use the right tool, even if it's free? Then, what they do is they contort process to fit a tool, which was built for the masses as opposed to them. So I'm really about process. Process leads you to making good tool decisions. And only when you've really exhausted processes and tools, because tools are scalable and there is, you just have a fixed price, every month, but it'll just continue to work for you. Then you hire people to do the stuff that process and tools don't do. And then they do it according to process and using the tools for efficiency. So that's how I think about it. And I think that it's in its purest form, it's those three simple steps. But I do think that's the logic behind making the most of your time.
Love that. And I think people do get that backwards. I want to come back to something that you said, but I also want to let the audience know that we'll take questions here for anybody that has a question, kind of get them queued up. So what you said is process first, then tools, and then people. If you're not good at process, or you don't think in a process way, are there any tips that you've seen that help somebody simplify how to think about the process when maybe they think in PowerPoint or they think in pictures or something like that?
Well, I think that it's kind of like the question, are you good at math? People go, no, I'm bad at math. I think people are better at these things than they think. I mean, they make laundry lists, they make grocery lists, they plan out trips. I mean, all those things are processes. And so I think that if you encourage people to sometimes to just write stuff down or write a list of things you don't like to do, whatever works. I mean, you just get people thinking about, what they don't like to do or how they do something, even if it's very simplistic. And then you can have somebody that is more process oriented step in and say, okay, well, you say step 1, 5, and 7, there's probably some sub steps in there. Let's fill in the blanks and I'll help you, because there's plenty of people that love to think out the steps of process. And so I think it's just coming to grips with the value of your time, and that, I don't like doing this. I don't like repeating this. So what's the solution? It's finding somebody that will, Now, in this case, you're going to kind of find a person first before the process, but you recognize that your process is your priority. So when you're looking for the person to help you, that's one of the key skills. And that's the first priority, is to let's inventory the skills that are, or the processes that are needed to run your core processes in your business, whatever it is that you're doing to deliver value to clients.
So don't assume that you're not good at it. And secondly, keep it simple, like just start with a list, or start with a picture of the way you think it is. Like start with what you have and then refine it. And then over time, you can hire somebody to help you tighten that process up.
Absolutely. I think the idea of over the time refining is a great mantra, frankly, because nothing is ever perfect and life is constantly changing. So sketch it out. Doesn't have to be, printed in black and white. Life is dynamic. So frame it out, broadly, and then, keep filling in the blanks as you go. That's what I do from a system standpoint. I kind of think out, okay, to get from A to Z, these are the steps. Then I start to work with my developer, and I realize, oop, there was a gap, could be a little gap, but I got to fill a step in there, and I think that's what we do. When we're planning travel or whatever, it's like, oh, I've got to pack this or that if I'm going to this place. So I think that's really kind of the way it is.
Great. That's a great suggestion. Anybody tuning in right now have a question for Elizabeth to take advantage of, I don't know, a decade or more doing freelance matching? Anybody have a question for Elizabeth? Anne, do you have a question for Elizabeth?
Terry, how did you know?
Oh, I don't know. It just came to me.
I always have questions. Elizabeth, I actually have two questions for you, Elizabeth. One is, when should you start working with a freelancer if you're a small business owner?
I would say soon. Because if you go back to the value of time idea, I think there's a period of time where an entrepreneur is figuring out what their purpose is, what the value is they want to deliver to the world. And there's no one that can do that for you. There's just a certain amount of soul searching and reaching for that purpose that no one can do for you. And it can be a painful process, and it's not necessarily once and done. I've evolved, myself, from corporate to entrepreneur, and, as I told the story. So I think that it's a lot sooner than most people think. But I think also recognize that there's value in doing stuff yourself, because you start to realize where the gaps are or where the hurdles are. And so I don't think there's a really cut and dried answer, but eventually, as you start building a list of things you dread doing, or you're not particularly skillful at doing, then those are things to outsource fairly quickly, because you're going to waste a lot of time and maybe not have the quality you need. And maybe you need to free yourself up to do more of that thinking, and trying things with clients. And some of those things might not even be successful, but it'll get you to a new place in terms of thinking about your business. Does that answer your question?
It does.
And I'll add one other thing. When you also know what you will do with the time you get back, because that's how you get an ROI on hiring a freelancer, is what you're going to get off of your plate, and you've got a process, even if it's just a checklist written out, but you then know where you're going to put that time and invest that time back in your business. You'll pay for that freelancer like that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Okay. And my second question is, do you ever swap matches?
Do I ever what?
Like you mentioned, you match freelancers with small business owners. Do you ever do like a swap if it doesn't work out the first time?
Oh, I see. It's changed to a different team.
Yeah.
That used to happen when we would match with individuals, because that individual, and it didn't always end up being a swap, because a lot of times the business owner would say, these are the priorities. We would match against that job profile, and then their needs changed. Well, it's like, if I didn't know it, I didn't know it, so I couldn't make a match. But when you do match to an individual, that does happen, because they're going to be capped out in terms of their capacity. They might only have 10 more hours a week, or they're going to be good at one thing, but not something else that suddenly your business needs. And you might not have known it, but it's like all of a sudden, well, when people came back to me and said competent, reliable, and nice now, I couldn't do now before, but suddenly I did need to be able to do now. So you need to have, I recommend having resources that can expand with you and grow with your business. And that's from a team perspective, which is what we do now. It's very rare that we do that. I think the biggest example, and it's never been a swap, has been we have some teams that don't have bookkeeping, don't have certified bookkeepers, and basically we just set up another job for a team that has a bookkeeper, and then we fill that need through another team, so they actually have more than one team. But and the teams tend to specialize in different things. But no, we just generally don't find a need to swap teams anymore to make swaps now that we're really working with teams.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have one. I love the process, tools, people. So I was curious about the leap, not the leap, but the transition from the process to the tool. Do you have any tips on finding the right tools? That can be pretty daunting.
It can, and keep plugging freelancers. First of all, they're extremely tech savvy. They have to be in this world. I mean, and a lot of work that they do for clients these days are really working with technology tools. And what I see a lot is people get a tool, they set it up to the bare minimum to get whatever problem is on their plate off their plate, but they never optimize the tools. So they've got this investment, but they're not really optimizing that investment to get the maximum, say, out of a CRM. They're not leveraging it for workflow to send out mailers, newsletters, or follow-ups, or touch base type things. And so we end up seeing a lot of people wanting to optimize their systems. And the reason I even bring this up is because the freelancers have extraordinary experience with a lot of different systems. And there are systems cropping up left and right. And so sometimes people hire the freelancers to help them figure out what software they need. And they've got real live experience, not only with the base version of a particular tool, but if the client wants to do X, Y, or Z long term, which ones are they going to be more accommodating or be able to do more with over time? And then, just from an affordability standpoint, some are more cost effective than others. And there's a lot of tools that are free that you can get a lot of mileage out of, if you know how to use them right. So, again, I think freelancers have made it their business to really know how to use these systems. And many times they may not have a specific systems expertise, but they have others that are similar. So, and the other thing about freelancers is they study up on their own. They're not expecting to be paid for it in their training time. They train themselves. And I think I'll just take this opportunity to bring up one of the most popular topics these days, which is AI. And I think the freelance teams I'm working with have really seen AI as an opportunity. So they can be more efficient and they can pass on that efficiency to the client. And so rather than writing social media posts or doing research, kind of the old browser way, they're using ChatGPT to be more efficient and do that grunt work for them. But then really, this is where I think human virtual assistants take over. They take over where the digital virtual assistants leave off, because now they can do the fact checking. They can add in the client's voice. They can do critical thinking in terms of, is this AI answer what we're looking for in this particular instance? And so Terry's heard me talk about this, but when you do research on virtual assistants these days, what you're going to see is tons of information about digital virtual assistants, which are bots. Those aren't human beings. So you really have to do a search for human virtual assistants to find out what the market is like for human beings, whether they're offshore or in the United States, that can really, add that human intelligence to the process.
Excellent. That was a great discussion, and I've forgotten about the AI bots. And they're branding them digital virtual assistants. And there is a place for that. There are some
Yeah, oh,
tasks
absolutely.
that I think are better served by a digital virtual assistant as opposed to a person in terms of ROI. But boy, that was a great one. Thank you, Lisa, for asking that. Anybody else have a question for Elizabeth to tap her all the wisdom she's got on finding freelance talent?
I have a couple reflections that may or may not lead to tapping some wisdom. One,
Cool.
as I listen to this conversation, I'm just struck by the similarities to Ben Hardy's and Dan Sullivan's book, Who Not How, and that most people have a tendency to try to think about how to do something when what they really need is a who. So that fits, of course, very nicely with the whole value of the freelancers, especially the matching that your organization provides. The other thing I'm struck by is, I mentioned in my introduction that I'm establishing a practice as a fractional COO, and the fractional community feels a lot like the freelance community was maybe 15 years ago or so. There's really, it's incredibly fragmented. There's not an efficient marketplace. It just seems like there's a huge opportunity there, especially since it's growing tremendously. As I engage with that community, it seems like there's a flood of Gen Xers like me entering the fractional world, but really a no good marketplace to match the needs with the resources. And I think the needs are great. There's probably a ton of unfilled needs out there just because of that inefficiency in the marketplace. So just curious if you have any reflections on either of those.
Yeah, no, I especially the latter, because there are tons of platforms out there, but in a sense, anybody can hang out a shingle these days and call themselves a whatever, a CX whatever. And frankly, that's true of virtual assistants too. Doesn't mean anybody can call themselves something, doesn't mean they're good. And how does the buying public distinguish? And do they have the patience or the knowledge to even make those judgments? And so I think that there's a lot going on in the remote virtual work space. There are a lot of think tanks thinking about that and organizing open platforms and things like that I think are going to, and they are focused more on the higher level talent, that particularly the serving, the larger SMBs and enterprises. And there are platforms that are focused on corporate talent that's operated at a leadership level, to work on those kind of projects. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that offline, if that would be helpful to you. But I think that it's going to be an evolution. And there's going to be, there's platforms like Results Resourcing that we can white label it. So if there's people that are interested in organizing a platform around X, Y, or Z, we've got a platform to do that. Because when I thought about building Results Resourcing, my particular interest was that my small market and freelancers, but to me, the scalable idea was building a platform that could serve any market. Anybody that wanted to build a marketplace that had curation principles could use a platform. And so I think that there's probably other platforms too, but that's something I had in mind, as other markets develop. So I think it's an evolution, and it'll get to some place. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it will get to some place. So over time. But happy to talk further with you, offline if you'd like.
Yeah, I would. That'd be great. And potentially could connect you with others in the fractional community, because I know, there are some platforms out there, but at least what I've looked at don't seem particularly evolved yet. So it feels like your learnings from the past decade or so put you well ahead of what's available currently.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot happening in the CX space, and the more clarity that, or more organizing principles so people can consume better, is a good thing.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
And I also have some research, Paul, from a book that I wrote that I'll share with you, a snapshot of the platforms that were emerging as of 2022. So that might give you a little bit of a jump start. And I agree with Elizabeth. Part of what we see in most businesses, and it is almost always an example of a non-conscious business, is people see an opportunity and they try to put a business into an opportunity to make money, as opposed to what you heard with Elizabeth today. Is she started her business because she knew this was what the work she was really called to do. She knew it was her time to do this, and she was passionate about it. So that in the freelance space, what we saw, because we wrote a book in 2012 and then wrote a second edition of it in 2022 called The New World of Work. And what we saw is across the board, platforms pop up and pop down because somebody thinks I can make money on this opportunity, but they're not really building a truly conscious business that's meant to serve a marketplace. And that is why we saw so many of the businesses that were in existence in 2012 when we wrote the first edition of The New World of Work were not there. I think Upwork was the only one that made it, that was consistent in that decade period. Second thing I would say, Paul, is the most effective solution that I've seen for fractional executives is creating a community or a collective of people and sharing work. So maybe there's a marketing person and an ops person and a financial person, and you form a collective, and one of you gets into an opportunity, and then you're able to bring each other in on opportunities. That I've seen work more effective in terms of profit than on the platform, on many of those C-suite platforms. Just something to think about.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Tara.
Other questions for Elizabeth before we wrap up? Well, Elizabeth, as always, thank you so much for being member number 3 and leading our board of directors and being a mentor and being a sounding board, and for everything that we do in SHIFCO. You've been a huge part of us getting the results that we've gotten and establishing the culture that we have, which we're very, very proud of. And also just congratulations on your success. I mean, I don't even know how many years I've known you now, but I've seen this business double and double again and double again. And, you know, you really are a CEO making a difference in the world, and you've built a phenomenal business.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words. And, you know, it's always a collaborative process, and I benefit a lot from working with you and being part of SHIFCO. And you know, it's just a constant building process, and it's really being able to work with the like-minded people that makes all the difference in the world. Exactly.
Well, I'll just put a reminder up here of the next couple of events that we have coming up. You're welcome to join any of our community events. They are free. Our way of giving back to the community, the Business Growth Power Hour, I highly recommend it. 1, What If Up is the easiest, coolest method. It's easy to implement. 2, you're going to get great ideas. And 3, you're going to walk away with a toolkit that you can put into play to be more curious and to create change in your business. So if you're available on Tuesday, March 26th, we don't always record those because they're very dynamic and people are sharing challenges they have in their business. But if you can make it, it will be well worth your while. And then on April 11th, the prosperity event, you'll walk away with some instant tools to change your mindset and stay focused on the difference that you want to make, as well as the financial success that you want to have. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate your time. And thanks again, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.